There are no adults or children when it comes to a numbers mission.
Kronos, the secret organization that rules one-third of the world's economy, has but one goal: to eliminate evil and bring about world peace. An elite group of assassins who all possess unique weapons and a Roman numeral tattoos somewhere on their body. Of all the numbers, no, 13 is the most impulse. Train Hardnet aka Black Cat. Train is a cold, calculated assassin, known for killing its targets with the utmost precision. However, the soul changed after a faithful encounter with a sweeper named Sia. Sweepers are mercenaries whose job is to arrest criminals in exchange for bounty. After a string of unfortunate events, Shane leaves Kronos and becomes Sweeper himself. Behind the scenes, a former race from Kronos Creed gathers a group of black-mind individuals on their own terms.
Train Hardnet, your orders are as follows.
At a young age, murdered, but the assassin chose to let him live and took it upon himself to train him to become a heartless killer. One night, Train finds the assassin shot in an undead store. In his final breath, he tells Train he must seek strength and survive. Flash forward years later, encounters the sweeper named Sia. This is a pivotal moment in Train's life, as Sia teaches him that weapons don't have to be used for killing. They act on the owner's will.
Why didn't you shoot him?
For starters, you saw how well that worked for you. And I guess I didn't want to. Just like I said earlier, the pistol does what I want it to, not the other way around. If I don't want to shoot, then I won't. It's pretty simple.
As he chooses not to shoot on two separate occasions, while still a member of Pronouns, this was out of the ordinary for him. But it seemed as though this was the kind of life you wanted all along. Instead of being tied down as promised as pet, you want to live freely. The life of the stray cat, if you will. After leaving Kronos, pre-volunteers and bring them back hover catalytics, he instead wanted to recruit Train to join him and taking down Kronos, to which Train refuses. This led to Creep killing Side in order to Train from our grass. This was another pit for a moment for Train, because I was a person he cared deeply for and was driving back the behind us changing now look. Next time we see Trains, when he's traveling with Ben and Eve with new partners. Here we see a sudden shift in his personality. Boy, we all know. And said he adopted a more carefree and enthusiastic. And while not opposed to this change, this was way too sudden. That's not to say he tossed away that side completely. He still holds a grudge against Creed and knows meant to get serious in a fight. It's just these two characters are they compared to each other. To change your personality.
Yeah. A friend once told me a gun doesn't have to be used for killing.
And who was this friend of yours?
Just someone who showed me what it means to be free.
Now, you can step back from the pretty lady, or you can force the hand of a chivalrous gentleman, me.
Sven Wolfe is a former IP agent who is now a sweeper. He lives by gentleman's code of honor. His main trade is probably his briefcase. He always carries full of gadgets, sleeping gas, a net, and a man-powered helicopter that can carry 2 people. His most send-out feature is his eye patch, covering his vision eye. With it he is able to see a few seconds into the future at the cost of his stamina. We learned that Sven obtained this vision eye from his former partner Lloyd, when he was still working as an IBI agent. The enemies then decide to break. I Need Help ended up dying trying to protect him. This segues into Sven's relationship with Train, I mentioned before, and the Enum whenever Creed's name was brought up. Off on his own and search for him. In episode 10, for example, Sven was able. And so we quickly. He then stops Train from falling, knowing that he'd be outnumbered and killed ever. Train was unable to realize that Stem was just.
Damn you, Sven! Why'd you stop me? Can't you see how reckless you become? It's as if you want to die. But it's my life and I can do whatever the hell I want! Stop acting. Without us, you'd be worthless. Why can't you see that?
Sven, stop it!
Another instance was in episode 16. In order to keep Train distracted from Creek, Sven joins it with the Sweepers Alliance. See Capture Creed. However, when Strain learns about the Alliance and was given Creed's location, Again, going to be found at the next episode. We see a brief reverse on roles between Train and Spin. Episode 22, however, when Eve gets kidnapped, Sven reacted in the Train, he's gonna go after you. Can be outnumbered. Fortunately, Train was able to knock some sense into him.
Don't act all high and mighty like you're the only person out here who gives a damn about Eve. I care about her too. Princess is my partner and my friend. Remember that time you punched me out?
It jogs a memory.
Well, do you remember the advice you gave me then? To rely on my friends. That's why we're going to find Eve together. As a team. You got that?
Pretty good advice, if I say so myself.
I am a demon.
Eve is an artificial human created entirely adamant. Because of this, she's able to transform her body into a variety of shapes and forms. Transform her hair into fists, make shields out of her hair, make a hammer, line up for hair. To a mermaid. Eve was first introduced in episode 3 when she was held at gunpoint, but we don't get to see what she's like until later on the episode. Then that she's been sheltered by tornado rude men and was taught one thing. She was a demon, and the demon catches the prey.
Eve, we're about to start a game of demon chase.
I am ready to begin.
Simple rules. The demon hunts the prey until there's only one of you left.
I will be the demon. Are we ready?
Because of this, she hasn't experienced the outside world. And Stan finds her alone at the park. He chases her to ice cream and promises that he would take her to eat something good. On the matter of the invasion, Eve was forced to go berserk in order to kill Train, but is stopped by Sven, who gets stabbed in the process. She's then spared as Train decides not to kill her, and Sven decides to take care of her for the time being. Eve quickly took a lark into books, as she wanted to learn as much as she could about the outside world. Before you know it, she begins to develop more of a personality and sounds less robotic.
Careful.
What was that for, princess?
You are much too slow, Train.
Very funny!
She also develops a sense of competitiveness session in episode 8, where she's eager to capture Eager Planter, when Spin and Train weren't as motivated. I've seen episode 14, where she emphasizes with the group of orphan kids and stays behind to protect them, out of the main cast of Trains. And Eve unsurprisingly has the deepest connection with Sven, as she was the one who saved her from going berserk. Since that incident, she's become more radar-like figure to speak. I tend to do a moment for her, near the end of this series, where Sven actually tells her that she shouldn't be following him anymore. Stan tells her that she still has time to make something up herself that doesn't involve violence. As with Train, she wants to live a free life, and this conflict causes her to run away. Sven accepts her way of life and allows her to continue traveling with them.
Being free is the most wonderful thing.
Did you just say something, Eve?
Aside from the main cast, the rest of the characters feel very one day. The only two characters I can think of that play a significant role in the story are Vincent Walker and Cree Diskins. Winslet is the beef for hire that we get introduced to in episode 3. Her skills are so impressive, however, that a member from Cronus actually ends up hiring her to collect data on Towel. Character as he's the villain for much of the series. Creed was a former racer from Cronus and Train's old partner. However, we aren't given any indication of that being the case. The only thing we know about him is he has an extreme obsession with Train, most likely due to his ability to kill some mercilessly.
Train, you are the ultimate! With such talent, you are flawless! To spar with you is one of my life's dreams. I've always wanted to taste a speck of your power!
When Creep defects from Kronos, he becomes the leader of the group, known as the Apostles of the Star, whose main goal is to take down Chrono. I'll talk more on the Apostles later on the video. In a flashback sequence, we learn that Creep was abused by what appears to be his mother. It's lost the police due to him living in a corrupt area. This caused him to have a very negative outlook on life, and eventually set his eyes on ruling the world as God.
Allow me to introduce Creed Diskins. He is the author of a new world order that will change history. The Apostles of the Star.
The Apostles of the Star are a group of Tau uses, led by Creed Diskins, and I was the main group of for much of the series. Tal grants a person incredible power and is awakened by drinking spirit water. The powers include control and gravity, air breathing fire and manipulating their own blood. Unfortunately, as at Cronus, we don't get to see how all the members came together to serve free. The only members of note are Charging Leon, Anzaki and Kyoko. Jerome was the gunman for the Apostles, but it was soon to loft by Creep, for going off on his own. Because of this shardness, or Sam doubts about Creep's leadership, and he realizes that Creed is just treating his comrades like disposable pawns. As a result, he leads the Apostles to destroy Kronos on his own, but it's quickly stopped by Superior. Leon was formerly the leader of a group of orphans, however he left us. He was under the impression that Creed was the only adult he could trust. Anzaki is your typical mad scientist who's interested in neuron technology and conducting more experiments in human life. With Yoko, she really doesn't get much character development. She's just a girl who can breathe fire and is evacuated with train. I honestly don't know why she joined up with the Apostles in the first place, but she is cute, I guess. During this arc, there were 2 invasions on the Apostles that took place. The first was led by No. 7, 5, and 11, otherwise known as Cerberus, whose main objective was to take down creatures. Nation was led by Corona. Here we see great power of tower nanotechnology evolved into an emergency. He was able to effortlessly deal with Superior, but was ultimately defeated by Train.
Finally, it is my chance to bring supreme peace to this world.
The Eden Project was an anime-only arc that occurs during the last 3 episodes. It was led by Mason, who defected with 3 of the numbers, as well as the remaining members of the Apostles. After Creed's feat 20 years ago, a war broke out between Kronos and the Tau users. This was known as the Great Taoist War. When the fighting ceased, Mason returned to Kronos and gathered a team of light minds, including Taoist survivors, scientists, and erasers, who were later found out, banded together to form the Apostles of the Star. The goal of the project was to infect the world with nanomachini and control the people en masse. Seizing Cow. The key to all this was Eve, as she served as Eden database. When Eve was captured by Mason and placed into Eden, she was met by a boy named Adam to serve as a guide of sorts. Even though Mason and Kenzaki were the ones who announced the project, I was first thought of by True Lunatic. True was a former researcher for Canio Rootman, as well as Eve's creator, proclaimed for that matter. However, Terry thought she was just being used, so she tried to destroy her work. Shino Kentucky was assistant at the time, had already been working with Mason behind the scenes. As a result, he stole her work before she could get rid of it. In order to save Eve and stop this raider machine, Train goes off and gathers the remaining members of Pronouns, Yoko, and the Sweeper. So long, I actually think the beginning of the arc started off pretty well. When Sven told Eve that they should part ways, she felt sad as she thought Sven did. And so she runs off on her own, leaving her wide open to get captured by Kenzaki. And I feel like Kenzaki always had some sort of ulterior motive, even when he was part of the Apostles. The issue with the arc is obviously the lack of build-up. Sure, it was surprising to see Mason defect from Kronos, but he barely got any screen time during the show. And the times he was on screen, he didn't do or say anything very meaningful. The same goes for the other 3 members who defected with them. All we were shown was a pretty sparring match, and that was it. The series in it show him having the slightest connection with. Not to mention, I was just rushed. 3 episodes to fit in an entirely new arc to close off. The anime is quite old, but doesn't always mean good. Take the last episode for example. They'll just be random snippets of the game, discussing what they're gonna do after they've been eaten. When they're still fighting Eden, I guess being inside Eden, you see weird revisions, like when Eden manifests the assassin who killed Transparents, but it's gonna be kind of confusing for first-time viewer.
Then you tell me, is wanting to live free so wrong? Don't you want freedom too?
What these 3 organizations have in common is to bring about world peace. That means a lot. And anything that threatens to destroy peace.
All Kronos does every day is fight for freedom. And the price of this is no one in Kronos can themselves be free. We have power. One cannot be powerful and free. If those with power did as they pleased, the world would be in constant chaos.
You can see how this goes against Train's ideology, wanting to live freely. If he had stayed with Kronos, he wouldn't have the freedom to do what he wants, or what he thinks is right. He'd just be tied down as Kronos' pay. Eventually Train does get through to Severia in the second encounter.
It's ironic one must kill to uphold peace. But for every member of Kronos, that's no more than an undeniable reality.
Well, if that's the case, then every number is no more than a mindless sheep.
After Train stops from killing Chardon, Superior grants him an oral calcum bullet in exchange for Train's vow to uphold his beliefs. But the Apostles, Craig's goal was to rid the wall of, usher in a new world order. But in reality, I think it was just a really again to change pants. But you know, what'd you do? During his fight with the Furious, the world would train by his side as he shows who gets to live and dies.
You have no idea what paradise is. My vision is very different from the false peace that Kronos so often preaches. Train and I will choose only those who are worthy enough to live, and the rest will be thrown out with the trash. Our paradise will be populated with peaceful inhabitants, fueled with the intent to kill!
Of course Creed is defeated by Train, but he didn't kill him. Instead he even used Chernana machines to counteract the ones in Creed's body, turning him back into a human. He must now spend the rest of his days reflecting on his actions. But the even Project Mason's idea of freedom was to control everyone using nano-machines in town.
It was a horribly gruesome time. The tragedy that engulfed us every living day was impossible to overlook. It was during this time that I decided we could stop man's inhumanity and greed. We could end this vile history before it got any deeper.
As I said in the beginning, the last arc of the anime would have been great if it was built up more. And I kind of like the idea of changing up on his own and not staying with Sven and Eve. I think that's more fitting of this character, seeing as how he's a straight cat and all.